welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast. Here with Benji in person. We've got Luke producing in studio the Giro d'Italia Stage 1 time trial. And there was a lot of, this time trial created a lot of problems as well. The stage, or the day before, when everyone was doing the recon, I think, how many riders crashed, Benji? It's at least 4 confirmed or 3 confirmed crash doing a recon of the time trial.
Well, Jan Tratnik for Jumbo is one of the ones that was the major news when it comes to yesterday. And mainly because Jumbo has had so many riders already drop out of their Giro squad. We had initially Kelderman back in Tirreno dropped out. Then that entirely got updated. We've got Vos that fell out with COVID. We had Heesink falling out with COVID. We had Jos van Emden coming and then dropping out again. And in the end, they started with a team that was not the team that was initially set up. But Tratnik was a big hitter out for them because he was looking lean, like you said. He was looking very good for this Giro, and he's going to be a big loss for the team. But next to him, Dusveld, Mollard, also hit by a car. That's major for, Italy.
Well, yeah, I shared on Twitter actually a statistic about more recreational cycling, and Italy's kind of an outlier in Europe that the major incidents for cyclists per whatever metric, million kilometers traveled was actually really bad. And so we've seen this with Broe training in Italy, and there was even a car in Lombardy that hit Sharkman back a few years ago. So big shame, but also this happens with riders. Like on the TT bikes, we know you're not handling as well. You might not be looking up. And so when a car does do the wrong thing, you can't react as quickly. So yeah, I agree. Tratnik out is huge. He was going to be that Castroviejo role.
Yeah.
That guy who you think like he could probably make groups of 15 and then pull the valley afterwards for Roglic. And he's a huge loss because now Dennis comes in. What sort of shape is he in to fulfill that role? He's not going to be in the same shape as Tratnik. And Globe comes in. He wasn't supposed to do a Grand Tour this year. He's a pure climber. And Omen's just been crook. So like the climbing's fine, but whatever in the middle, and the rouleurs are fine with the Feeney and Hessman, but the middle is not looking too strong for Jumbo. And that's where Quickstep have a huge advantage with Vavaka, with Seri, with Catania.
Exactly. Now, when I look at that team, you mentioned Glog and so forth, and you mentioned Dennis coming in, but I also swear that he was a bit ill during Romandy, if I recall correctly. So the run-in for him wasn't perfect towards the Giro either. It was like we weren't sure what form he was going to be in going into this Giro in the first place. But that being said, we know the team coming in. Like you said, Glogan, we had Dennis coming in and so forth. And that's a team surrounding Roglic for this first time trial, but they wouldn't be by his side in this time trial because it's individual, you know?
And, well, Dennis was going to go early. I think he can, at least with a guy with a lot of time trial experience, he can test out equipment. He can also say, okay, I think the course is running this way, even if he doesn't have the top leg. So I guess he can help in that sense. But yeah, here's a time trial. Fossa Cesia Marina to Ortona. I think the whole course just about was barriered except maybe sections of the climb. A lot of it's on a straight out bike path, really fast. I don't know the rolling resistance exactly of the white versus green paint on the bike path, but yeah, and then it was flat, and then the last 2.5Ks, 3Ks had a little kick up, and I think that was really advantage Evenepoel, and that ended up being, there were bigger gaps between some of the guys on that climb, which is the intermediate time check 2 to the finish, about 4 minutes, that effort. And there's really big differences here on that section and different pacing strategies, even within teams. Like McNulty and Vine were 17 plus 9 is 26. I can do math still, nearly 30 seconds different, despite doing almost the same finishing time on that hill. So maybe rider preference, I don't know. But yeah, 19.6Ks, I wasn't expecting monster gaps on GC between everybody, but Remco Evenepoel comes out, the Aero Bullet in the Belgian national bands, which I maybe haven't seen him in yet, or maybe he wore them in the Vuelta. No, he was in red in the Vuelta.
Yeah.
So he couldn't wear them. Wins this TT by 22 seconds over Ganna. I thought, okay, he's going to win by 5 against Ganna because the hill is actually a bit harder than we thought. And it's 22 seconds, Benji, to him. And to Roglic, quick maths, 43 seconds. I was thinking 15 to 20 seconds. 43 seconds that's already all the bonuses Roglic could ever take in this Giro, plus some.
Exactly. And it's only the first of the 3 time trials.
Exactly.
Now, those 2 time trials, Roglic might be better off in those time trials because this was the worst that I could possibly happen in terms of time loss I would expect on a time trial like this for Roglic. So you see riders that are not necessarily those two riders doing better, where I was like, I wasn't expecting Gegenhardt to set the best time or one of the best times here in this race, and then he ends up fourth in this time trial, and I'm like, if Roglic loses time to Gegenhardt like that, then his time trial wasn't good enough.
No, exactly. He loses 3 seconds at the finish to Gegenhardt. And yeah, you can say, okay, same time as Stefan Kung. Stefan Kung's a good time trialist, but this is very similar to a Basque Country TTs, which Roglic has dominated in previous years, where you wouldn't expect him to be on the same time as Stefan Kung with a pickup at the end. So he definitely, he underperformed in this TT to come sixth, same time as Kung though, but a 43-second loss. And also our pick for the Giro overall, or did you change? Were you forced to change to Remco? I think you were.
Yeah.
Even though Almeida comes in third, he was 29 seconds slower than Remco, the second best of the GC contenders, and a decent gap from him too. 11 seconds from Almeida to Gegenhardt, and 14 seconds from Almeida to Roglic. Vine on 22:04. I should just run through the top 10. Evenepoel, Ganna, Almeida, Gegenhardt, Kung, Roglic, Vine, McNulty. Now, Thomas was fourth at T2 and third at T1. And then on the climb, he was 46th. So he fully blew up, or maybe that was just his pacing strategy, Geraint Thomas, on the climb. But he was looking really good until then. And I don't know. And then Vlasov also same time Thomas in 10th. So that's a lot of GC contenders. How much conclusions, or what conclusions can we draw from something like that with Thomas though? Like, is it right to say, oh, well, his flat power is good and he didn't hit his target weight and then his climbing's no good? I don't really think you can, because they're still doing on the last section like 40 kph. Like, they're not doing the mortar roller. It's doing 40 kph. Is it just he mispaced it and blew up on the climb?
Maybe, but I would also say that we said before this Giro started that he wasn't looking at his best yet. Now we know this Grand Tour has his best week or the hardest week in the last week with Crans Montana or Gran Montagna, whatever you pronounce it, in week 2. And knowing the presence of those hard stages, he doesn't need to be at his best yet. So he can grow into the race towards that second time trial, and by then he should be at a top level, because that second time trial fully flat should fit him. And then going further into the race, if he's at a better level climbing-wise, it's going to matter a lot more than losing, even if he loses 30 seconds on Campo Imperatore because he's not at that level yet, he might be able to gain that back or something to top 3 candidates, like a third rider candidate in GC, maybe top 5 candidates, depending on what level he comes into by that last week when it really matters. But back to Roglic for a second and Evenepoel, would you say that over the year so far, you've been disappointed in time trials by Jumbo-Visma in general?
It looks like the gap between them and the rest isn't so as big as it might have been before. Like, back in the team time trial in UAE, it's like, okay, well, they got Kuss and Glock, so how good can their TTT be? But then in Paris-Nice, they won by a second ahead of EF and 3 seconds ahead of Bike Exchange, or Jacob Alula, sorry, who, like, the Jumbo squad was filled with world championships in the time trial galore. So what's happened there? Is it the equipment? Was it the pacing? Did they get the strategy right? Or, I don't know. Has Ineos stepped up? Because Ineos in some TTs this year, I've been like, not the best. Like, I thought they could have done better. And then Gegenhardt comes, like, this is the best Gegenhardt ever done in a in a time trial. This is like outrageously good from him. He was 11th at T1, 10th at T2, so he's pushing on the flat. Remember, he's slender. He's not the aero bullet like Remco, so he's still going full gas there. But then T2 to the finish, he was second on 4:04. Which was the only other person that went quicker was McNulty, who very, very strange pacing from Brandon McNulty. I don't know if he had an issue. He was 104th at T1, 104th 22nd at T2. So I don't know if he did he swap his bike at T1? Because he lost 1 minute and 17 seconds in 10 minutes to Remco at T1. And then he did 3:52, which is 12 seconds quicker than Gegenhardt and 14 seconds quicker than Remco on the climb. Or he just thought the climb was much harder, or he was going for the KOM jersey, which I think he now goes into.
That's very possible. the thing with McNulty as well is we saw him on the route, and when it comes to his time checks, we didn't get the time imminently.
True.
So
Weird.
there were a lot of intermediate check problems in this race. Riders that crossed the line and the time didn't stop, like Almeida, and with McNulty where the time didn't really show up, and with Vlasov where the time didn't really show up. So I'm wondering whether that's a problem, eh?
Yeah,
Usually we can say, oh, he doesn't have his transponder on his bike, so we maybe changed bike. But now everybody was having those troubles because the directing wasn't that great in that sense, the broadcast side of it. But we can't say if it's a transponder missing, whether he changed bike or not, or whether he just had a shit start.
True. Maybe put an asterisk on what I just said regarding his pacing. But yeah, he seemed to be quickest from T2 to the finish. But if you want to watch the Giro d'Italia, as you know, the best place to do so is GCN+. There's even, Benji was excited to see a Nibali shark documentary. I don't know if they have actually, if they licensed shark images for that documentary. They certainly got images of Nibali. That documentary is interesting about him and his career. And as you know, he won the Giro d'Italia twice. And someone to remember for this race in the 2016 Giro, I need to go back and look whether he was dominating week one or Froome was dominating week one in 2018, because, you know, already you see Remco here and you're like, oh, is it over? But yeah, it's interesting when you think back to riders like Nibali and Froome that the Giro is a bit different maybe to the Tour or the Vuelta, particularly the Vuelta last year. But if you want to get GCN Plus to watch every kilometer of this Giro with pre and post stage coverage, you can go to the LR link down below and get 15% off in selected territories and catch up on those documentaries to fill in the time as well. But other people to pick out, I guess we already said Vine was solid, a very good TT, 22.04, 3 seconds behind Roglic. And maybe we've done the positive Benji. Let's pick out some other trends that maybe were less positive. I would say Bahrain, you know, those guys are struggling with their setup.
Oh.
Caruso and Haig, you know, Haig loses nearly a minute 40. Caruso loses over a minute 30, and Caruso's a good time trialist in this time trial. So, and Buitrago loses 2 minutes. So they're three guys. Gino Mader also out with COVID before this race too, which is a big shame. They're just battling like with that setup. And if this is this TT, imagine the 30K flat one, like they could be putting in huge time differences or losing huge amounts of time.
Exactly. And when we speak about Almeida, obviously his riding was great, but I think we need to talk about the elephant in the room. The man can't drink.
Oh, yeah.
Post-finish, he tried to drink and it flew everywhere. I swear about 75% of the water bottle went into the floor. But on to more important things. Vine versus Almeida. We've spoken about both doing good time trials here. Almeida's ahead at the moment. I think they'll just ride both their own TT, but this is a very good TT from both the UAE riders. And I don't know. I'm hyped for Almeida. I think we kind of exaggerated in our preview when it comes to calling Almeida for every single week, every single stage in the last week, but it's looking good at the moment, and I think he's only going to get better.
This is a ridiculous overperformance from Almeida. I did not expect him to come third in this TT, to beat Stefan Kung, to only be 7 seconds behind Ganna over a 20-minute TT, which is mostly flat. I don't know if he's changed his setup. I don't know if he's changed his weight, because Remco was talking about last year he was lighter in the Vuelta and his TT in the Vuelta was not as good as he expected, and actually considering how banged up Roglic was, the gap wasn't so big, and he's come into this Giro with more weight so he could have more absolute power for the first week, which has got, you know, 50 Ks of flat time trial in it. I don't know what Almeida's done, or maybe he just had good legs today and did a good altitude camp. I don't know, but he paced it really consistently. 5th at T1, 3rd at T2, and 3rd at T2 to the finish. And I mean, Ganna, Benji, he kind of did, out of the non-GC guys, I think he did his best here. Like 2nd at T1, 2nd at T2, 2nd at the finish. And he's just, you know, about 10 seconds slower than like the Almeida and Geoghegan Hart's. And he's only 7 seconds slower than Remco on the climb. Remco was just on one today. Like, this is, to average 55 on this TT, I mean, yeah, there's not many more superlatives to say about Remco. Like, the storms are coming in. Maybe it's pathetic fallacy for this Giro d'Italia. It's the rain, there's hail starting outside. But yeah,
Jesus.
Remco, I mean, should we overreact to this? Because that's what the tendency is. Like, I look at this and I look at Roglic and him where he finishes, and it's like, if Roglic is going to be sort of at Almeida's level, and maybe Almeida's better, is this really a 2-horse race? I know that's very, no, but it's a big, big time gap. But then again, if you look at previous Giros, so much can happen in week 3, even in the other weeks. And yeah, but obviously Remco's on the right foot. And I think if you're going into stage 9 for Quickstep now, you've got to be pretty confident in saying he's going to take more time, 45 seconds, a minute minimum again. So you can probably play with that buffer now.
Exactly. If we look at the situation now, we see that Remco gained those 43 seconds. If we look back at how much time we expected him to gain, was maybe 15 to 20 seconds in this time trial. Now, maybe Remco did a bit better, but I would also say this was a pretty awful TT by Roglic compared to what we expected initially. If we look at the time trial that is coming, like you mentioned, he should be losing more time that we predicted him to lose in the first place as well. Now, when it comes to the climb in the time trial, they did similar. So it's not the climb that decided it. It's not the flat. It's just in general the time trial that seemed to have decided Remco was better at this time trial simply. When it comes to Remco's position, in the next week, we've got 2 relative sprint stages. The next stage is a sprint stage. The stage afterwards is like a versatile sprint stage. Depends on what happens on the climb that is there in the last 30, 40 kilometers. And then we've got stage 4, which is Lago Laceno, a medium mountain hilly stage, where attacks can happen, and stage 7, Campo Imperatore. If you are Remco Evenepoel, I say your goal is to let a not super dangerous break go, riders that are allowed 2-3 minutes in GC, and let them take the GC pink jersey on stage 4. It's Remco. He probably won't want to do it, but he needs to do it because...
But won't he be thinking, I got Roglic on the ropes here. He's come in undercooked. I got 4Ks, 9%.
Yeah, but
I can drop him, take more time.
He can do that behind as well, eh?
True.
He can do that in 17 minutes behind the breakaway.
You lose the bonies.
Then he might lose 17 minutes to the breakaway, which might not be ideal.
Well, who are the candidates for that based on this time trial? Because there were some people trying very, very hard who you might not expect to have tried so hard. I think the biggest one is the old suspect who has made it over the last few years, always tried to do this, Rein Taaramäe. He finished 43rd, but based on his profile and their team setup, you could tell he was trying full gas. He finished not too far. He finished ahead of Thibaut Pinot and other riders like Derek G, who's okay in the TT. So Taaramäe's a clear candidate to go for pink, I would say, and he'd be someone that I wouldn't be too concerned about. Rein Taaramäe. Is there anyone else? Like Carthy lost 2 minutes, or Kamna, Benji, based on his, Kamna's a good time trial rider. He lost 1 minute and 23 seconds to Remco. Is it too early for Kamna to pull the plug on the GC project, or was his goal to go T10 anyway and in GC, and this doesn't really change your ability to go top 10? I mean, it's very different to what he's made a career out of so far. And same goes for Bob Jungels. He's on the same time on that team.
Oh, is it too early? I don't know. You said beforehand that you would have wanted him to be in the breakaway gang again for this Giro in the first place. And when I then think about the rest of the Giro, I feel like, maybe he can get 9 for 10th in GC, but I'd rather see him win 2 or 3 stages, or try to win 2 or 3 stages.
Or wear pink for a week.
Yeah, stuff like that. And I believe that he's still in a good position to do that. Even if he's a minute behind on GC on stage 4, I wouldn't really be angry at Kamna gaining 3 minutes on me if I'm Remco Evenepoel. I'd be fine with that. Same with Taaramäe, same with De Marchi, for example. Those type of riders. Kind of the riders that finished in the...
Thibaut Pinot.
Yeah, the top 40s to 50 in this time trial. Ben Healy, Pinot, like you mentioned. And we're going to see those riders in the breakaway. Harm van Hoek is probably going to be in the breakaway. Coffey's a difficult one because...
They won't let him.
He's been up there in GC in the past, but I don't expect him to be up there in GC at the end of the Giro, though.
Carthy's always he always comes good in the end of the third week.
Yeah, and it's a hard week as well.
And then it's a brutal third week. I'm not too worried about Carthy GC. This is sort of, I didn't expect it to be that big of a time loss because he is on an EF setup, which is pretty slick. But yeah, like Tuchel got hit by the car. These are sort of, there are some decent climbers who are close, who I wouldn't be too concerned about getting in the breakaway and going. I mean, even on stage 3. But before we go on to the preview of tomorrow's stage, Benji, is there any other sort of nuggets from this? Like Vlasov solid, like Thomas solid. They're really, apart from Remco just being just on another level and Roglic being a bit less, there's not. I guess Almeida's the big standout to me. Almeida was, yeah, really, really, really good, but I don't know what that translates for the rest of the race. Tomorrow's stage. Teramo to San Salvo. It is a flat-ish with some little rollers on the coast in the last 60 kilometers or so, 203 Ks long. There's medium mountain beforehand. I don't think this, I say this, I don't think this is the easiest stage to control, but if I remember the first sprint stages of the Giro last year, it was the Bice brothers in the breakaway, and they got 12 minutes and then got brought back. So with the firepower of Groves, Movistar, Pedersen with Trek, there are too many teams that are motivated to go for the first sprint stage. And this is a nailed on sprint stage. Jayco Alula with Matthews, for example. That's 4 very strong teams, at least, who will be trying, and maybe even DSM for Dainese. So here you got Benji. I think we were a little bit underrated Gaviria in our preview for the sprints. I feel I'm high on Gaviria. I think he's quick.
Yeah.
I do. I don't know how technical this finish is in San Salvo. If it is very technical, I have to go and look at VeloViewer. To me, it looks like they go in, turn left, then turn left again, do a dog leg.
Dog leg?
Dog leg, your favorite word. But I don't know how far that is from the finish. I think Gaviria launches early. Pedersen gets onto his back wheel and does the business, taking stage 2.
Okay, that's a solid theory. I think we look at a lot of teams that can do stuff here, and we mentioned Gaviria for 1 stage or so in the preview. He could indeed do more than that 1 stage, but if he depends on how he launches. If he launches with 400 meters
early,
Groves is going to be up there. Pedersen is going to be up there. I had Pedersen for every sprint stage, so I need to stay with Mess Pedersen for the sprint stage. While I do believe that I would have liked to see Edward Turns in this team, like you mentioned multiple times in last year's Vuelta and so forth, I still trust the one-man lead out of Alex Kirsch in this race. He can bring him up there when it matters. The annoying part with Pedersen is he's the type of sprinter that needs to start at the front. He's like a Wout van Aert when it comes to the sprints. But that's against the top sprinters. Against the second line of sprinters, I feel like he can compete either way. No?
And who's got the monster trains here anyway? You got Hunter and Torres with Rojas for Gaviria. That's a solid enough train. Affini probably won't even be sprinting. Consoni's got Chimolai and Chimolai leading him out. Astana signed Bowl, didn't send him. Who else? Alpecin have the best train. They got Oldani, Sparagli, Sinkeldam, Leysen for Groves, and Krieger. That is by far the best train. Alpecin to Koenig. So Groves should be in good position. If I was Pedersen, I'd probably be trying to bully Groves off Sinkeldam's wheel. I think Pedersen's quicker than Groves. Groves in Paris, he was there. He got beaten by those guys a couple of times, and then he beat like Coquard and other guys in Catalunya. I think Groves almost is like he's climbing unbelievably well. But yeah, Gaviria, I don't know what Edward Turns did to offend Trek. Maybe Trek either hate Pedersen, Kirsch, or Turns, because I have no idea how. I'm sure he'll do something good, but like Turns should be here for Vergaeta. Like, why Kirsch? Okay, Darnell is your setup man in theory, but I've not really seen Darnell in the big Grand Tour sprint stages at a K to go ripping it. And he might, he's a young guy, he's decent in the TT today, but Kirsch to me is not a natural last man. He can do it, but I think it would be even better, and especially as you said, Pedersen likes to be at the front. If you go Darnell, Kirsch, Edward Turns as the final launching man for Pedersen, then it's like looking really good. But they didn't, so I don't know what. Yeah, maybe Edward Turns doesn't want to be a leader man. I don't know. But yeah, Pedersen I got Anything else? Any other news from the Giro, Benji? There's the final TT might not
Oh
be happening.
God.
We forgot to do the preview. Just so everybody knows, so the final TT is supposed to be crazy. Monte Lusari, the refugio, or no, monastery, sorry, near the Slovenian border. And apparently they realized, cars couldn't follow the riders on that.
When?
Surprise, surprise. And then they're like, okay, motorbikes will follow the riders on that. But there's not enough motorbikes per rider?
Yeah, but when did they realize that?
I mean, to me, it's pretty obvious. Like, well, you should have realized that cars couldn't do it maybe when the road was created, like the dirt road, maybe in 1500 BC. So that was pretty obvious that cars are never going up that road, how narrow it is. And then you got to have enough motorbikes. Now, maybe the DSs don't want to have, like, to be sitting on the back of a motorbike holding a bike. Like, that was what's supposed to happen. So that might change. They might do Monte Zoncolan, which I think is slightly wider, is also brutal. Probably doesn't have the same pinches, but still 7Ks, 12%. Remco is saying that he basically made the point, which is fair enough. You released the route 6 months ago, 7 months ago, actually. We've all trained on the basis that we're going to be doing this mountain TT with 11Ks of flat beforehand. It's going to be ridiculously steep. You can't just take that out and just do a flat TT, or you can't just take that out and not do a TT. You have to do a mountain TT that's something similar physiologically. And I think if they do have to can it, which would be a shame, then they have to do Zoncolan or something similar.
Yep. And the worst part of it as well is that it shows up in the idea of the news and so forth 1 day before the Giro or 2 days before the Giro. The UCI apparently brought it up towards RCS that it would be an issue. UCI should have brought it up months ago. If they did it last minute, then that's so the safety manager was sleeping for 17 years.
This is arguably the second biggest race in cycling, and it's not my job, but I was thinking, logistically, when I first saw it, I was like, well, how are they going to do this? Are they going to have drones covering it? Because the first thing I thought it was TV coverage.
Yeah.
How's a motorbike going to sit in front of the rider and not stall? Because they're going to go, on certain sections, they're going to be going 8 kilometers an hour. There's going to be fans on the side of the road. And so this is the problem with the Giro. I get really hyped up. I was really excited in the preview. I was really excited in the Route Reaction podcast. And then every year these things happen where these stages we were super excited for sort of get taken away or watered down, or they can't happen. It's like, and I know they're trying to make a crazy parkour, which, is cool, and there's difficulties with that, but I think not Grand Bonon, San Bernardino or Gran Bernardino, the big climb into Switzerland, that's under 4 meters of snow, or there's 4 meters of snow. That Campo Imperatore had 4 meters of snow. Now, they might have cleared it by now, and with the Swiss climb, they can just do the tunnel, which, it does take out a bit of climbing, but that wasn't going to be the most decisive part of the race. That wouldn't ruin the stage to me if they did the tunnel, but if they can't do Campo Imperatore, then, that's the biggest mountaintop finish of week 1. It's the only mountaintop finish of week 1. They have to do that. Otherwise, the color of that week 1 is changed. So it's this, you want to get excited for these stages coming up. We keep saying, well, this Giro is going to be really close, because even if Remco has 3 minutes, you don't know what can happen in week 3. But if what happened with the Bernal Giro happens, when the stage gets 2 of the major climbs removed, then it's a lot easier to defend if you do have the incumbent advantage. Or in Bernal's case, he would have gained more time because he was the strongest on that stage. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully they have a resolution. I think they'll probably do an alternative difficult climb like Zoncolan. But it's also,
Wollonga Hill.
Yeah, Wollonga Hills. Should we be too critical of RCS? Because they have to do the race in May, right? The TT is different. They should know. But for say there is bad weather in Crans-Montana, and they can't do there's too much snow to do Campo Imperatore. They have to do the Giro in May. The weather is what it is. They either don't put in any of these climbs because they don't want the risk of the stage being changed because it might snow late or the snow stays late, or they put them in and then hope that the weather's okay and hope we get a great stage. I guess the middle ground is, okay, put them in, but you got to have a plan B ready to go in case the weather doesn't play ball.
And on one end, you could say when it comes to those stages, can RCS prepare for that in that way, like you say, when it comes to the weather and so forth? That's one thing. I don't blame them as much for a great mountain stage with 3 above 2,000-meter mountain tops falling out because of snow. That's something that can happen if a race falls into May. Maybe it should be at the end of the season. We can talk about it at some point in our lives again. Should it switch with the Vuelta? Who knows?
Yes.
But but I would say the plan of having DSs on a motorbike with their bike on their shoulders is the most stupid thing I've ever heard in cycling. If you come up with that, you deserve to be deported out of any country you live in the same way that the person who designed Remco's Belgian NC jersey should also get deported.
What's wrong with that?
It's so ugly. It's atrocious.
The TT one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not too much you can do with it. It's just
That's not true.
The Dricola, right?
I've seen so many better Belgian jerseys than that.
You know, this happened. We were watching Benji. I'll say it because he laughed when it happened, and Luke did as well. When he came on the screen, I said, "Who the fuck is that?" I didn't know who it was. I was like, "Who's the Belgian national champion?" And they're like, "That's Remco Evenepoel. He's the favorite for this race." I was like, "Oh, I'm off to a good start in the Giro." Imagine if I was doing live commentary. I'm just going, "Who's this?" You just get booed immediately. But anyway, it doesn't matter about Remco or what jersey he's wearing because we know our mate is winning the Giro. Y'all laughed at us, but if he's this close in a TT like this, imagine what he's going to do on Crans Montana. Probably take 5 minutes and everyone's going to be OTL.
5.
At this rate.
15.
15, yeah, minimum. Minimum, even though it's a 30, 40-minute climb. But yeah, that was our Giro Stage 1 recap. TT, not the most, nothing too crazy happened, except the fact that we have big time gaps and Remco is looking very, very good. Pressure builds on him. Can he do the Giro Tour double?
The triple.
Should he pull out and do the Tour? Is this too easy for him? Should he?
No. No.
No? Okay. Should Roglic?
Should Roglic pull out into the... Yes.
No. I don't know. This is obviously ridiculous talk because I'm still excited. I'm still excited for the huge mountain stages. But yeah, it is interesting, like seeing how people go. Yeah, that's all from us today. Thanks for GCN for supporting the show. Make sure you check them out if you want to watch the Giro in full and also La Vuelta Femenina. But until tomorrow's stage, ciao.